The 70s saw some really awesome blockbusters like The Exorcist and The Omen. Oh, how could I forget Ridley Scott's original Alien movie? But then came the 80s, and we got stuff like The Thing, The Brundlefly, Critters, Gremlins, Pumpkinhead, and whatnot. These were the years when the sun was shining upon prosthetics and animatronics and some really awesome special effects. CGI wasn't a big thing yet, especially for lower budget films. This meant that makeup effects artists like Rick Baker, Stan Winston, Tom Savini, and Rob Bottin could really flex their creative muscles. This is basically what led to the creation of some of the most amazing and most bizarre creatures in horror movies. And in this video, we'll discuss the top 18 of them. So, without further ado, let's begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. Now, this is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Thing, the shape-shifting alien from John Carpenter's The Thing, 1982. The Thing, the super infamous alien from John W. Campbell's 1938 novella, Who Goes There? And its film adaptations is quite literally the ultimate shapeshifter. Every cell in its body can function independently, allowing it to spread its terrifying influence through assimilation, parasitism, and infection. The creepiest part is that the Thing doesn't have a true form. It's a master of disguise, and it constantly morphs to imitate whatever or whoever it consumes. In the wild, the Thing is an ambush predator. It isolates its target, devours them, and then takes their place. When cornered or threatened, it fights back with whatever it can. Tendrils, claws, extra mouths, you name it. But the real horror lies in its cells. Each one is a separate life form that can break away and start the nightmare all over again. That's why total destruction is the only way to kill it. Fire, in particular, works best. The Thing's core instinct is self-preservation. It's so dedicated to survival that it'll attack other versions of itself, if that keeps it hidden. When it's ready to strike, it launches its tendrils and begins the assimilation process. If it's in danger of being discovered, it'll split off into different forms to create confusion and chaos. Its intelligence depends on its size. The smaller forms aren't very smart, but the larger ones, especially those that mimic humans, are incredibly cunning and manipulative. They retain all the memories and knowledge of the beings they've assimilated, using this information to their advantage. For instance, the Blair Thing knew how to build a makeshift UFO and handle explosives. The reason why the creature works so well on the screen is that great minds were behind it. While Rob Bottin did most of the special effects, Stan Winston, the master of special effects, was involved in a few of the designs. For instance, the Dog Thing. The main dog thing in The Thing was designed and built by Stan Winston and his team after Rob Bottin, been handling the film's creature effects, became overwhelmed by the workload. Bottin reached out to Winston for help, asking him to take over the intricate design. Though the studio suggested Bottin simply hire more staff, he felt he didn't have the time to oversee a larger team and trusted Winston to deliver. Having previously worked on Winston with little time, scrapped the idea of an elaborate animatronic and opted for a hand puppet instead. He began with a photo of himself, drawing the Dog Thing design around the shape of a puppeteer. Winston's goal was to create something that looked like a dog, but clearly wasn't, while also maintaining continuity with Bottin's other effects. Artists resculpted the Dog Thing to look more deformed and monstrous, with an asymmetrical dog head emerging from its back. The puppet was constructed with radio-controlled eyes and cable-operated leg and lip movements. Anderson puppeteered the creature from below the set, wearing it over his head and upper body. So, that was The Thing for you. A creature as hated as it is appreciated by horror fans, but so is this next entry on the list. Brundlefly, the human-fly hybrid from David Cronenberg's The Fly, 1986. Brundlefly, tragic monster from David Cronenberg's The Fly, has one of the most heart-wrenching stories in horror. Once, Seth Brundle was a brilliant scientist, working on his groundbreaking teleportation pods. But one fateful drunken test with an unnoticed housefly inside the pod turned his life into a nightmare. We watch in horror as Seth slowly transforms into Brundlefly, losing his humanity piece by piece. Before everything went wrong, Seth was just a regular, if genius, guy. He knew molecular physics inside out, but couldn't handle a simple car ride without getting motion sickness. He had a soft spot for music, playing the piano, loving Beethoven and Bach. After the teleportation accident, things changed drastically. Seth became supercharged, stronger, faster, with boundless energy and almost no need for sleep. But it wasn't all positive. As he morphed into Brundlefly, he developed strange abilities, like crawling on walls and spitting corrosive enzymes. His body became increasingly grotesque. Where Seth was once thoughtful and kind, Brundlefly was vicious and desperate, willing to do anything to fix himself himself, even if it meant pulling Veronica, his love, into the horror. In their final confrontation, Brundlefly was barely recognizable. Learning of Veronica's pregnancy and her plans for an abortion, his twisted instincts kicked in and he kidnapped her, determined to protect their unborn son, Martin Brundle. The Brundlefly was a full-size animatronic creature designed to bring Seth Brundle's horrific transformation to life. Initially, a small working model was built to troubleshoot any issues with the puppet's use in the confined set. While a suit was briefly considered, it was quickly dismissed as impractical. Director David Cronenberg insisted on using a puppet within human proportions. The Brundlefly was sculpted by a talented team led by Chris Wallace and John Berg. Wallace focused on the head, right leg, and key parts of the body, while the rest of the team worked on other areas such as the arms and legs. The puppet had an inner armature made of fiberglass and steel, with sections covered in foam latex or urethane to reduce its weight for easier manipulation. In the film's climax, Brundlefly fuses with one of his teleportation pods, creating the biomechanical horror known as Brundle Booth or Brundle Thing. This final form was designed by Wallace, with construction overseen by Howie Weed and Jonathan Horton. The Brundle Thing puppet featured cable-controlled eyes, mouth, and fingers, and its crawling motion was operated by 9 puppeteers beneath the set floor, with rods connected to its head, arms, and torso, all concealed by smoke and vapor from the telepod. So, we had one alien, one science gone wrong monster. What next? How about creatures from another realm?
Angels to some and demons to others.
The Cenobites, the demonic beings from Clive Barker's Hellraiser, 1987. Cenobites from the Hellraiser franchise are these otherworldly beings straight out of a gothic horror fever dream, members of a twisted order known as the Order of the Gash. Their day job, and night job too, is capturing anyone who solves the Lament configuration puzzle box and pulling them into a world where pain and pleasure are one and the same. Created by Clive Barker, these creatures aren't your typical demons. They were once human, drawn into dark obsessions that transformed them into these terrifying entities. While they might look demonic to us, they're more like monks from another dimension, driven by their own perverse philosophies. The word Cenobite comes from Latin, originally describing monks who lived in communities. The Hellraiser Cenobites share that, but instead of spreading religious teachings, they preach their gospel of pain and pleasure. Each Cenobite is equipped with supernatural abilities and their own custom torture tools, and they can appear anywhere when summoned by the puzzle box. Once they've locked onto their target, escape is nearly impossible, as they can drag victims back to their dimension. However, without the puzzle box, they're stuck in their own world. Take Pinhead, the leader of the Cenobites. His powers are unmatched, and he can even turn humans into Cenobites after death, as he did in Hellraiser 3, creating a new crew from his victims. These beings excel at blending physical and psychological torture. Speaking specifically about Pinhead, Mr. Barker, someone who calls himself a 6 on the sliding scale of S&M, first thought of Pinhead when he visited this gay nightclub called Cell Block 28, where he saw for the first time people piercing each other for fun. There were no drugs or alcohol. The only liquid that spilled there was blood. These people had transformed the definition of pain to pleasure. And that's exactly what the Cenobites do. They don't differentiate between pain and pleasure. Pinhead has these multiple pins on his head, which should be the source of constant pain. But no, he totally likes and enjoys that pain. So yeah. Pumpkinhead, the vengeful demon from Pumpkinhead, 1988. While working on Parasite in 1982, Stan Winston started thinking about stepping into the director's chair himself. That opportunity came when the producers at De Laurentiis Entertainment Group sent him a script for a low-budget horror film called Pumpkinhead. They initially approached Winston to design the film's creature, a demon of vengeance summoned by a grieving farmer after his son is killed. The story, based on a poem by Ed Justin, caught Winston's attention. Pumpkinhead is no ordinary demon. Unlike the typical biblical version, he looks more like an alien, tall, pale, and incredibly powerful. His connection with the person who summons him is eerie and deep. In the 1988 film, Pumpkinhead has pale skin, a massive head covered in buds, and glowing white eyes with reptilian pupils. His features include a noseless face, pointy human-like teeth, bulbous veins on his neck and shoulders. His name comes from his large head and the fact that he was buried in a pumpkin patch. As a demon of vengeance, Pumpkinhead is relentless and sadistic. He takes pleasure in tormenting his victims, dragging out their suffering for his own enjoyment. His goal is simple: make them pay and make them suffer. But he doesn't harm bystanders unless they get in his way, and they're fair game. Pumpkinhead's strength is off the charts. He can easily toss cars, smash through obstacles, and overpower multiple enemies at once. Wherever he goes, powerful storms and winds follow. Whether this is something he controls or just a strange side effect of his presence, one thing's for sure: when Pumpkinhead shows up, the weather turns ugly. The final stage of creating Pumpkinhead Pumpkinhead involved multiple skilled artists. Alec Gillis sculpted the head, while Tom Woodruff Jr. and John Rosengrant handled the body. Rosengrant and Howard Berger painted the creature, which was built as a full body suit, worn by Woodruff. The suit's skin was made from foam latex with spandex added for durability, and the claws were crafted from translucent resin. Due to budget constraints, the hands were posable but not articulated, so 2 animatronic arms were created by David Nelson. Both fully articulated hero heads and simpler stunt heads were designed to sit above Woodruff's own head, making the creature appear taller. Pumpkinhead's digitigrade legs required special extensions, devised by Richard Landon, which were used alongside a harness for support. Woodruff explained that they never intended the extensions to fully bear his weight, as they wanted to keep the design sleek. Pumpkinhead's leg extensions were among the first successfully used in film, and the technology was inspired by Boss Film Studios' research for Predator. For shots from the waist up, Woodruff walked on platforms to maintain the illusion of height. He also incorporated Ray Harryhausen-inspired movements to give Pumpkinhead a regenerating, undead feel. At the film's end, Pumpkinhead's face morphs to resemble Ed Harley's, reflecting their bond. John Rosengrant sculpted this new face, incorporating traits from actor Lance Henriksen, who portrayed Harley. Finally, Ed's body is shown being buried as a deformed fetus, sculpted with Henriksen's likeness. Critters, the small, furry alien creatures from Critters, 1986. Critters, released 2 years after Gremlins, was born from a script written long before its predecessor. However, after Gremlins' success, New Line Cinema finally greenlit Critters, forcing director Stephen Herrick to modify the script to reduce similarities. To bring the ravenous aliens to life, producer Rupert Harvey turned to the C.H.U.D.s brothers, a trio of special effects experts. Tasked with delivering complex effects on a tight $100,000 budget, they had just 10 weeks to design and construct the iconic creatures known as Krites. Charlie C.H.U.D.s designed the critters as hairy, beastly monsters with small limbs, large jaws packed with triple rows of teeth, and glowing red eyes. To speed up the process, they abandoned traditional foam latex in favor of a quicker method, a thin latex skin over a urethane foam, which set in minutes. The skins were painted with rubber cement and covered in real moose hair to give the critters an authentic, animal-like texture. The critters' mechanics were just as intricate. Their 13-inch puppets featured radio-controlled eyes and cable-controlled arms, hands, and facial movements. A red light bounced off their plexiglass eyes, creating the eerie glow seen on screen. Only 4 main critter puppets were made due to budget constraints, but the C.H.U.D.s creatively reused them by applying prosthetics like scars and deformities to double as other characters. Various specialized puppets were also built, including rolling critters, quill-shooting critters, and even a 26-inch leader critter. Despite the challenges, including a hectic shooting schedule and limited resources, the C.H.U.D.s brothers successfully brought the voracious, iconic creatures to life, ensuring Critters became a memorable addition to 1980s monster cinema. The American Werewolf, the werewolf transformation in An American Werewolf in London, 1981. In John Landis's horror comedy, An American Werewolf in London, 2 American friends on a European backpacking trip stumble into a nightmare after a vicious attack by an unknown creature. One of them is killed, while the other, David, slowly realizes he's transforming into a werewolf. The craziest moment in the film is undeniably the transformation scene, brought to life by makeup legend Rick Baker, which remains one of the most iconic in cinematic history. Baker's work earned him the first ever Academy Award for Best Makeup, and for good reason. What makes the werewolf transformation so memorable is its raw, visceral realism. Unlike other films that shy away from showing the full transformation, the movie keeps the viewer locked in, watching David's body painfully shift into its new form. His hands elongate into claws, his face contorts into a wolf-like snout, and his spine twists, all in real time. The setting is intimate, David's girlfriend's cozy London apartment, making the monstrous changes even more jarring. Behind the scenes, actor David Norton went through an equally grueling process. Prosthetics were tightly fitted to his body, making him feel suffocated at times, and the intricate makeup work took hours to apply, all for just a few seconds of footage. The transformation scene took a full week to film. The result was groundbreaking. Rick Baker's practical effects set a new standard for horror films, making this sequence a benchmark for werewolf transformations, and which shows the power of physical effects in cinema.
Now can I have one?
Oh, I don't know, Pete.
Stripe and the Gremlins, the mischievous creatures from Gremlins, 1984. The Gremlins from the iconic film series are mischievous little creatures that thrive on chaos. Modern twist on the old myth of gremlins messing with airplanes, these small goblin-like beings are all about causing trouble and pulling cruel pranks. They follow a pecking order, with the nastiest and smartest rising to the top, like Stripe, the ringleader in the first movie. By the time Gremlins 2 came, genetic experiments had produced a whole new lineup of bizarre gremlins, including the brain gremlin, gremlin, who's refined and articulate but just as devious as the rest. The real twist? Gremlins start off as cute, fluffy mogwai, but if you get a mogwai wet or feed it after midnight, it transforms into a gremlin. These creatures aren't focused on eating people though. Instead, they have a sweet tooth, raiding kitchens for candy and snacks like chicken legs and frozen yogurt. What they love most though is wrecking your stuff, whether it's messing with your electronics or causing general mayhem. Their big weakness is sunlight. Direct exposure to bright light literally melts them, which is why both gremlins and mogwai shy away from anything too bright. Chris Walas designed the original Gremlins puppets, making them nearly identical except for Stripe, the leader, with his signature white tuft of hair. The puppets were operated using various cables connected to levers and switches that allowed the puppeteers to control their movements. For Gremlins 2, the new batch, Rick Baker took over puppet design. Initially, Baker turned down the job, feeling it'd be too much work for characters he hadn't created. However, director Joe Dante convinced him to come aboard by offering creative freedom, give each gremlin unique traits and personalities. This led to the new distinct batch of gremlins like George, Lenny, Daffy, and Mohawk, each with their own identity. Unlike the first film, where the gremlins were mostly blackish, the standard gremlins in the sequel were green or brown. The film also featured gremlins that transformed after consuming chemicals in a lab, resulting in new creations like the vegetable gremlin, the brain gremlin, the bat gremlin, and the electric gremlin. The puppets in Gremlins 2 were more advanced, with improved movement and more realistic designs. The sequel also used stop motion for certain scenes, including the bat gremlin and elevator gremlins. Today, props and puppets from Gremlins 2 are easier to find than those from the original film. Belial, the deformed twin from Basket Case, 1982. Belial from the Basket Case movies is a monster, alright, but his backstory is kinda tragic. Having said that, as a creature from the 80s, this guy ticks all the boxes to claim a spot on this list. Now, I won't call him a special effects wonder or a masterpiece, but he does give the chills. So, what's the story about Belial Bradley? Dwayne Bradley arrives in New York City carrying a mysterious basket. Inside is his deformed Siamese twin brother, Belial, who was surgically separated from him against their will. While Dwayne looks relatively normal, Belial is consumed with rage over the forced separation and harbors a deep hatred for the doctors responsible. The two embark on a revenge mission against those doctors. During their stay in a seedy hotel, Dwayne befriends a nurse named Susan. Jealous of their growing bond, Belial attempts to rape her, but when he fails, he murders her in a fit of rage. Furious, Dwayne tries to kill Belial, leading to both brothers falling from the hotel window. In Basket Case 2, the brothers are taken to a hospital after their fall, but they're soon rescued by Ruth, caretaker of a group of similarly monstrous individuals. When a reporter tries to expose them, she's overpowered by the weird family. Belial and Dwayne are reunited, their twisted bond as strong as ever. By Basket Case 3, the progeny, the family is forced into hiding, with the authorities hot on their trail. Ruth warns Dwayne to stay away from Belial for safety, but Belial finds solace in a female monster who resembles him. They soon have a brood of monstrous offspring. The Hungry Beast Alien, the insatiable alien from Terror Vision, 1986. The Hungry Beast is a classic alien menace which takes on elements from The Thing, Critters, and The Blob, and it follows a familiar alien invasion storyline. This terrifying creature ends up on Earth after the Plutons, a race of aliens trying to save their own planet, accidentally beam it into space as pure energy. Unfortunately for Earth, this energy gets caught by a satellite and manifests into the Hungry Beast, which invades through TV sets. Plutons had originally mutated the creature to save themselves, but their plan backfires on Earth, where the Hungry Beast wreaks havoc on a suburban family. It begins its feast by devouring the grandfather before moving on to the protagonist's parents and their unsuspecting guests. The Plutons, realizing their mistake, attempt to warn humanity to turn off their TVs, but one of them is mistaken for a villain and gets killed. The Hungry Beast, meanwhile, continues his rampage. Although it doesn't speak, it's far from mindless. It stalks and ambushes its victims, absorbing their genetic material and using their voices to lure in others. With tentacles that can mimic the heads of those it consumes, the creature is as cunning as it is terrifying, ensuring its feeding spree lasts until the family is completely devoured. The Bugans, the underground creatures from The Bugans, 1981. To be honest, Bugans isn't really a movie that takes itself seriously, and strangely, that works in its favor. Apart from the characters, which are the high points of the film, Bugans introduced a really weird monster. Not bad, but yeah, weird. So, what happens is that a small construction crew of 4 men set out to reopen an abandoned silver mine in Colorado, unaware that they're about to awaken something horrifying. The mine was sealed off a century ago after a mysterious massacre, but now their excavation stirs the creatures that have been lurking deep within the mineshafts. These predatory beings, known as the Bugans, are a fusion of reptilian and spider-like features, with elements of both in their deadly design. Basically, they're a mix of turtles and spiders. Well, I'll leave it at that. The Bugans have been dormant for centuries, are ravenous. They emerge from their underground lairs, ready to feed on the unsuspecting townspeople. As the attacks begin, a group of friends becomes trapped in the very mine that harbors these creatures, fighting for survival. Physically, the Bugans are kinda terrifying creatures, I'll admit. Their heads resemble turtles, but with sinister large eyes and mouths brimming with razor-sharp teeth. Their 4 powerful tentacles, 2 ending in claws, 2 in pincers, are strong enough to break through wooden doors and drag human victims. Their hunting style is stealthy and brutal, relying on ambushes to drag prey toward their gaping maws. Despite their monstrous form, Bugans are nearly indestructible. Bullets and sharp weapons do little to stop them, as they shrug off injuries that'd kill most creatures. The monster from The Kindred, 1987. The creature in The Kindred, Anthony, is a monster born from dark experimental science. Tentacled abomination, Anthony is the product of genetic tampering and is hidden in the basement of his family's home, unbeknownst to his brother Jonathan, who returns to the estate after their mother's death. Anthony's form is a mix of slimy, alien-like characteristics with an oversized head and writhing tentacles that extend out to attack. From the moment Jonathan discovers his mutated sibling, Anthony becomes central to the horror. Creature is violent and dangerous, seemingly growing more aggressive the more it interacts with the outside world. He's not only monstrous in appearance, but also in his actions, and kills anyone who crosses his path. The transformation of other characters into creatures, like Amanda Pays turning into a fish-like being, suggests the corruptive and transformative power Anthony exerts, either directly or indirectly. The film leans heavily on practical effects, with Anthony's rubbery tentacles being the most prominent feature. They slither and strike out at his victims and penetrate the skin or wrap around his prey. These effects, although somewhat dated, give the creature a physical, tangible terror. Despite the somewhat stiff puppet-like movements, the sheer volume of practical goo and hemoglobin adds to the visceral, grotesque nature of the monster. When Anthony's wounded, the white sticky substance gushes out, symbolizing the life force within the creature. Miniature versions of Anthony, small, malformed creatures, also appear and serve as his offspring or mutated companions. In the end, Anthony's death is as messy and dark as his existence, as he perishes in a slimy mass, taking with him the chaotic, unnatural forces that brought him to life. Ghoulies, the small demonic creatures from Ghoulies, 1985. The Ghoulies are terrible creatures conjured from dark magic with small stature, strange features, and vicious nature. These creatures serve as instruments of chaos and death under the command of their conjurer. In the movie, Jonathan, who inherits his father's occult estate, unknowingly unleashes the Ghoulies during a failed ritual in the basement. Initially concealed from everyone but Jonathan, they swiftly become his loyal servants, doing his bidding as he delves deeper into the dark arts. Physically, they're short, hunched over, with sharp teeth and glowing, malevolent eyes. Their small size and agility allow them to sneak around unnoticed, making them perfect tools for Jonathan's sinister plans. As he becomes more consumed by the power of the occult, the Ghoulies grow in influence, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Jonathan, blinded by his pursuit of power, begins to use them for darker purposes, and even manipulates his friends and orchestrates rituals with their help. However, the Ghoulies' true loyalty lies not with Jonathan, but with Malcolm, his resurrected father. Malcolm commands them to kill Jonathan's friends. They mercilessly attack his friends, using their sharp claws and agility to overpower and kill the victims without hesitation. Though small, the Ghoulies are nearly indestructible, driven by an insatiable desire to obey their master's commands. Even after Malcolm's defeat, the Ghoulies remain, lingering around Jonathan's circle of friends, appearing in the back of their car in the final moments, hinting that their terror is far from over. Their ability to remain undetected while hiding their sinister presence makes them a persistent and unrelenting force. Ghoulies' blend of cunning, loyalty to dark forces, and predatory instincts make them relentless creatures, leaving a trail of chaos wherever they go. The Alien from Xtro, 1982. Once we did this video on 12 pervy and demented monsters hellbent on insemination or just being creeps, but had to take it down because YouTube didn't quite like it. Now, Xtro was on that list. It must be clear to you now what kind of monster appeared in this movie. So what goes on in here? Well, Sam Phillips is abducted by a mysterious alien light while playing with his son, Tony. 3 years later, an alien creature, ugly and vaguely humanoid, reappears. It goes on a killing spree, eventually attacking a woman in her home. The alien forcefully impregnates her, and shortly after, she awakens with a rapidly growing baby bump, eventually giving birth to a fully formed adult version of Sam. This violent and unnatural birth results in her death. Sam returns to find his wife, who has moved on with another man, though her feelings for him still linger. Meanwhile, his son Tony remains devoted to his father, despite everything. The alien light that abducted Sam had also planted a seed, giving rise to the creature that assaulted the woman. The pregnancy, one of the film's most bizarre elements, happens disturbingly fast as the alien uses its body to inseminate Terminator, resulting in a weird transformation and birth. Though the film has its flaws, it delivers some strong moments, particularly in its depiction of the father-son bond and its use of special effects to create unsettling imagery. The shock value of the aliens' methods and the rapid pregnancy make it memorable, even if the overall execution feels like a pulpy B-movie. Despite its uneven narrative, the film still intrigues with its surreal and unsettling moments. The Mutant Bear from Prophecy, 1979, but the movie is often associated with 80s horror. Catardin is a nightmarish creature, a mutated grizzly bear that's grown to an abnormal size due to an environmental contamination. The terrifying form and behavior are the result of her parents consuming fish polluted with inorganic methylmercury. This toxic exposure in the womb caused Catardin several deformities, which were passed down to her own offspring. Catardin is feared by local American Indian tribes who believe she's an ancient spirit, angry about the logging activity disturbing the mountain. Physically, Catardin is a monstrous version of a grizzly bear, but with severe mutations. She stands at an intimidating 10.5 feet tall, far larger than a normal grizzly, which reaches around 7 feet on its hind legs. Her right side retains some bear-like features, though it's still disfigured, patches of missing fur, and a twisted back. Her left side is much worse, which resembles melted flesh with no fur, deformed ears, and her lips pulled tight so that her sharp teeth are exposed. Her eye is absent on this side, which gives her an even more horrifying appearance. The pinkish red skin and malformed body parts make her look like a creature from a nightmare. Her terrifying presence is matched by her aggressive behavior. Catardin is mentally unstable and highly hostile, and attacks anything in her path. Her impulsive violence is driven in part by her connection to her cubs, which compels her to hunt down the protagonists. The bear relentlessly pursues them, causes chaos and destruction. Rawhead Rex, the ancient monster from Clive Barker's Rawhead Rex, 1986. Rawhead Rex is a highly malevolent ancient demigod who is infamous for his brutal acts of consuming children and tormenting women for his sexual pleasure. I could use the R word, but monetization? Anyway, in Clive Barker's original story, Rawhead is described as a towering 9-foot creature with a horrendous flesh-like face and a gaping mouth filled with sharp teeth. His appearance symbolizes raw, unchecked masculine aggression, possibly representing the male sex drive taken to horrifying extremes. In the graphic novel, he's portrayed as lanky and blue. The film adaptation alters his look further. Here, he appears shorter, more ogre-like, and clad in armor, with a thick mohawk, glowing red eyes, and lion-like teeth. His chest remains exposed, aiding to his intimidating presence. In both the original story and graphic novel, Rawhead Rex is a savage, sadistic killer, finding delight in slaughtering anyone in his path, including children. He learns to adapt, discovering new ways to inflict terror, like using fire and gas explosions as weapons. A notable scene involves Rawhead sparing a woman because her menstrual cycle disgusts him, a small nod to his twisted persona. The film tones down the sexual elements, focusing more on his animalistic violence. One strange moment features him baptizing a follower by urinating on them. Despite these changes, with Rawhead showing his immense physical strength by flipping vans and surviving explosions. Bullets are useless against him, demonstrating his near invulnerability. His eventual defeat in the movie diverges from the source material. While in the story he's overpowered by a woman's touch on a magical rock, the film sees him immobilized by an idol that causes the ground beneath him to collapse, trapping him. However, the final twist reveals that Rawhead is not entirely vanquished, as he later emerges from the earth, victorious once again. C.H.U.D.s, Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers from C.H.U.D., 1984. Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers, or C.H.U.D.s, are the result of a Nuclear Regulatory Commission cover-up involving toxic waste dumping under a secret program called Contamination Hazard Urban Disposal. The waste turns mutated humans into radioactive monsters. In the chaos, we lose Captain Bosch, who's shot in the back by the Commission head, trying to hide his crimes. But before Bosch dies, he manages to save AJ and George from a dangerous situation in the sewers. They avenge him by taking down the Commissioner in an anticlimactic scene involving an exploding vehicle that looks oddly like an ice cream truck. C.H.U.D.s are mutated humans with slimy brown skin, glowing yellow eyes, and mouths resembling deep-sea creatures. They also have sharp ears and wear ragged clothing. Thanks to the toxic waste, they've gained immense physical strength and endurance, but at the cost of their humanity, they've devolved into cannibalistic creatures. These monsters are incredibly tough, surviving even flamethrower attacks. Equipped with sharp claws and teeth, C.H.U.D.s are stealthy ambush predators, able to see complete darkness with their glowing eyes. Their diet is strictly human flesh. When prey is scarce, they venture out to hunt, but always return to the underground lairs where they live in groups. The Blob, the gelatinous monster from The Blob remake, 1988. The Blob remake, directed by Chuck Russell and penned by Frank Darabont, was another attempt at revamping those old-school monster movies, much like David Cronenberg did with The Fly. They spiced up the 1958 classic with some slick visual effects, transforming the Blob from a wobbly jello-like thing into a genuinely freaky, oozing entity. Despite their efforts, the film didn't exactly crush it at the box office, and Russell later thought maybe mixing humor with horror wasn't the best move. But now, looking back, it's that combo of laughs and scares that makes it a pretty solid horror film. In the 1988 remake of The Blob, the creature is the unintended result of human experimentation. Scientists sent bacteria into space, which became mutated by radiation. Initially designed as a biological weapon, it quickly spiraled out of control and was launched back into space to prevent further damage. Decades later, it returns to Earth, crashing down in a meteorite, much like the original story. The Blob's core ability is absorbing any living thing it touches, growing larger with each victim it consumes. As it absorbs more, it becomes an ever-expanding threat, making escape increasingly difficult. Its amorphous form allows it to shift shape and squeeze into tight spaces, making it nearly impossible to hide from. In the remake, it also develops the terrifying ability to shoot out tentacles, adding to its deadly arsenal. Despite its monstrous power, the Blob has one major weakness: extreme cold. Traditional weapons have no effect on it, but freezing it stops the creature in its tracks. However, even when frozen, the Blob isn't truly destroyed, just contained, the possibility of its return looming. Killer slugs, the deadly mollusks from Slugs, 1988. In Slugs, the town faces an unexpected terror in the form of killer slugs, an invasive and highly aggressive species that begins a deadly rampage. These aren't ordinary slugs, they're carnivorous and leave behind slime-covered corpses while wreaking havoc wherever they go. Despite their slow, slimy nature, these creatures manage to overpower victims with surprising strength before pulling them away into the shadows or outright consuming them right away. They seem to have mutated and possess an unusual hunger for human flesh, and their attacks are swift and violent. The slugs' attacks are marked by the telltale slime trails, and those unlucky enough to be caught in their path are quickly devoured. Their seemingly normal size hides their strength, as they manage to overpower grown adults and drag them away, or ripping tools from their hands. One of the film's more shocking moments involves a character unknowingly ingesting the slugs, leading to a horrific and fatal scene as the parasites explode out of his body. The slugs can survive in various environments, thriving in sewers, damp areas where they nest. They seem nearly indestructible, able to withstand several attempts to kill them, including explosions and being shot. However, like other gastropods, they do have a weakness. Salt and cold temperatures can harm them, though this knowledge comes too late for many victims. In a bizarre twist, the heroes try to eradicate the slugs by luring them to a central location in the sewers with a bag of meat, blowing them up with a hastily concocted chemical mixture. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one. Be safe. Thanks, everyone.